Yeah, there we go. Okay. So yeah, week 2, day 1. And I just want to go ahead and recap really quick for the sake of the camera so we know where we are. Last week, we started out by doing some exercises in looking and writing and description, and then moved on to drawing with the blind contour drawing. Then we used our drawings as a basis to make shapes that we could then manipulate and make into collages. And then we switched gears and we did our research trip to the grocery store where we sort of put some of our looking motion, our looking muscles into motion at the grocery store and kind of used that as an opportunity to collect research and made a list of things that we could then manipulate, become subject matter for our stamps, which we started carving on Friday. Does that sound about right? Did I miss anything? Yeah. So in terms of carving stamps, I'm curious where we are, how that process is going, how you guys are enjoying it, or just anything you'd be wanting to sort of like just share about that process.
I'm really close.
Okay.
Which I'm happy about.
Yeah.
So it's like this right now.
Yeah.
So you can see it's not, sorry, the light's really bad. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I got about halfway done.
Okay.
So I'm still working on it. My hands started hurting and I had to stop for a moment. So, I mean, I've been working on it like 4 hours a day, like consistently. And once my hands hurt, like I just give it a break. So
sure. Yeah.
that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Jessica, full disclosure, Jessica and I actually met one-on-one over Zoom over the break. And we had a little bit of we had kind of like a one-on-one session because she's, as maybe you can tell, she's making a really elaborate stamp. So we kind of did some troubleshooting and game planning for her to proceed. And it's looking good. It's looking good. Are you happy with it so far?
Yeah, I think, yes, I think it's going to be, I'm excited about it because I think it's going to be a project that I actually probably keep working on after this class and just like keep adding to and manipulating with more stamps to get like the full vision. So that's exciting to me. I think it's probably the most elaborate, like, I don't know, project that, I mean, I've done stuff that's elaborate in the past, but this one just seems a little bit more, I don't know, complex.
Yeah.
It's because of all the studying the contemporary art we've been doing lately in the other class. So that's been helpful to kind of get things moving.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. Well, great. That's wonderful. Anybody else?
Mine are much smaller. I got them, where's my, carved out. Are you laughing at how small they are?
No, I just, what I like is just like the variation.
Okay. And you said you liked the olives. So I ended up doing the olives and I really like how they stamped out as well. Cool. And my favorite one was the end of the carrots, but cool. I like it individually, but when I started playing around with like the stamping and everything, which is right here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't like how they look together. It looks very dragony.
Dragony? Like a dragon?
Yeah, it just looks like dragon work and yeah. I'm just not into it. So I was really disappointed in my carrots. And then this was probably my favorite one. This and the olives, the part on the grocery store floor where we have the arrow. Yeah. And I was looking down. I just didn't do my feet right there. But I really liked how, and this is just from an ink pad, so I really liked how that turned out, and it created those like little diamond areas in between.
Yeah, totally.
So I have my 5. What was the other one? And then this was a close-up of one of the products where 2 pineapple cans came together, and I
Mhm.
liked the center of it and the words and everything. So that's where I'm at.
Wonderful. Awesome. Anybody else?
I have 4 of mine done.
Okay.
I decided not to do my very first design because it didn't kind of go along with the others. So mine are all kind of small too.
Yeah.
They're very close up images from actually dishes and cups from the store.
Oh, cool. Like paper plates and cups and things like that?
Yes. Well, like Tervis cups or those cups for a lot of the designs.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's another one. They're very kind of organic and florally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I'll show you the design of the first one. So like that was the very first one that I liked it, but then I decided it was too kind of planned out and symmetric. I know it's not symmetrical, but like too balanced compared to the others.
Right.
So I'm working now on that one.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more organic and not so man-made.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I like that you're able to look at something and be like, oh, it's a little too much of this, and like you kind of have a feel for it. Yeah. Which is, I always find that to be really strange. Like you start on a project, even something you've never done before, and you get like not very far into it, and you just all of a sudden it's like, oh, apparently I do know what I want, or I know what I don't, and I find that process to be very interesting.
And then it was tricky as you plan your design out on paper, because that's kind of what we're used to doing. And then having to figure out if you want to think reverse when you start carving, like what do you want to keep and what do you want to get rid of? So that was kind of fun. And then kind of changing it too. Changing the design as you're carving and adding to it. So that was fun.
Yeah. Did anyone have issues with reversal? No? Great. I think that can be one of, if you've never worked in print before, that can be kind of one of the trickier things to get used to, is the flipping that happens. Normally when I teach this class, I think I mentioned this before, we use the press to make we kind of do something similar with drawing, but we use the press to make monotypes, like using our shapes as stencils. And so the flipping happens there as well. That was not the case with the collaging, because of course what you see is what you collage, but with the stamping that is. So I'm glad to hear that everyone was able to kind of flip their brains in that way. Well, what I want to do today is to talk about converting acrylic paint so that it can be used to actually print our stamps. And in order to do that, what we're going to need is our acrylic paints, our plastic cups for mixing. We're going to need this medium that you ordered from Dick Blick, the retarder, which slows down the drying time of the acrylic paint. You'll need a brush. You'll also need your glass or plastic slab, like the kind of sheet of plexiglass or glass that you have, and we're going to use that to actually roll out paint on, and basically make our own ad hoc ink pads. And you'll need your stamps and paper to print on. And I think that the paper that you should have, like in terms of your materials list that you're going to want to print on, you should have had a couple of, let me see if I can pull up the list here. I think it was pieces of drawing paper. And I think I recommended, how many did you guys end up buying? 6? 8? Okay, some people 6, some people 8. I think for today, what we're gonna need are 3. Let's go ahead and do 3. We'll shoot for making 3 patterns, but let's allow for some mistakes. So you might want to have some scratch paper nearby or your sketchbook so that you can sort of test out printing with the acrylic on scratch paper or your sketchbook. Okay, so that's what you need for today. But before we get going, I am going to be better about this week. I want to do the shadow writing exercise. So let's actually grab our sketchbooks where we had written about our shadows last week. And we're going to take 3 minutes to observe the shadow system that we looked at last time. Let everybody get their stuff settled. Okay. All right. You good to go? Okay, so put your eyes on that shadow system that you observed last week. And for 3 minutes, we're just going to write about it. Write about where your mind goes, what it reminds you of. And I would say go ahead and be aware of kind of like how what you observe is different or has changed from the last time you looked at it. So write about it for 3 minutes, which starts now. Okay, that's 3 minutes. So I'm gonna promise myself and all of you, we're gonna do this at the beginning of every session this week. And I really like this idea of like looking at something so much that you start to see just different things. So we'll kind of do that to kind of get in the zone every day this week. Let's see here, let me make sure I got an email. Okay, that's just junk mail. I'm gonna try and keep track of my emails, chats, and participants in case people get kicked out or anything like that. Because what I'm gonna do is I wanna talk a little bit about the process of actually prepping the paint and working with the paint and the stamps. So I'm gonna grab my slab. Okay, I'm going to pin the video of my hands. So here's my hands. Go ahead and okay, so what I've got are like acrylic paints and my retarder and plastic cups. So what this retarder is, it's essentially something that you can add to acrylic paints. I might have a slightly different one than the one that you guys ordered. This is just like what I had in my studio, but this is the same this is the same type of medium as the one that you guys had on your list. And what it does is it basically extends the drying time for acrylic paints. It kind of makes the drying time just like longer, more open. Acrylics, because of the liquid plastic that the pigments are mixed with, they tend to dry, they dry much quicker than oil paints or any other type of paint, really. And they dry particularly fast when they are spread out into a thin sheet, like when you paint with them. So I'm sure you've noticed like a cup full of acrylic paint is going to dry a lot slower than it does when you actually take a brush, put it in that cup, and then spread it thin on a piece of paper, a canvas, a painting, etc. What we're basically going to be doing is spreading paint onto a piece of glass, which is non-absorbent, but we are going to be thinning it down really thin. So what we can do is we can add something to our paint to make it so that it dries much slower, allowing for us to stamp with it. So I'm going to start by actually mixing color that is interesting to me. And white to this. Got a piece of scratch paper here. Let's go ahead and sample my color to see how it reads on the page. Kind of like a neutral yellow. Start with some white here. Add a little bit of yellow. And sometimes what I like to do is actually just take a dab of one color and add it to another, just so that they're kind of linked in some ways. Just did a little bit of that. I just added a dab of my neutral yellow to my more pale yellow. Let's see how that looks. There we go. So I've got my lightning stamp. And I think what I'm going to do to start with is actually just vacillate between these two colors and make a lightning print. We'll see how that works out. I'll keep this nearby just to kind of test my stamps and test my swatches. And here's what I've got. I've got my two paint colors. I'm feeling good about like the paint mixes. I would want to get these colors to where I feel good about it. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a good amount of my retarder to my paints. I think I'm going to go ahead, well, I'm going to give it a shake. Let's see. And I think I'm just going to start with a squirt here and a squirt here. It's not, now it's difficult to see because it's clear in there. It's not exactly like rocket science, but it is a transparent medium, so you don't want to add more than like 20% retarder to your color, because then it starts to actually affect things like opacity and viscosity, things like that. After I add it, I'm going to mix it in, make sure it's well incorporated. Here we go. Okay. I think that I'm ready to go. One more thing, forgot to mention. You may also find it helpful to have a spray bottle nearby. I'm not sure if this is something that you guys have. Was this on your materials list? It was? Okay. Keep this nearby. It's not necessarily mandatory, but it may be necessary for some people, for some paints or for some combinations of paint or powder. So I like to keep that handy too. Okay, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna rearrange the studio here a little bit. I'm going to move this up. There we go. This is my plexiglass tablet. And I want to angle this so that you guys can see not only my plexi, but also my table. I'm going to just tape down my scratch paper here because this is the paper where I was testing my swatches. I'm going to go ahead and tape it down just because I also want to test my stamp. So what I'm going to do is just paint a thin sheet of my paint on my tablet. And I'm going over it a few times to make sure it's like nice and thin. I want my sheet to be bigger than my stamp. Go. Set those off to the side. So I've got my two slabs. I'm going to take my stamp and just plop it down. Press. Not hard. There we go. I've got a little bit of paint on there. I can place it on my page. And I put one hand on top and I press on my hand. There we go. There is a little bit, one second, we actually move the thumb so you can see this. There is my lightning stamp. And then also you can see there's a little bit of a lightning imprint in my yellow ink pad. So what I can do is I can take that brush, smooth that back out. Go ahead and stamp again. Go ahead and switch colors. Let me go ahead and move this up. You can see it. Okay. So I am pretty happy with the color variations. I know the yellow is difficult to see on the camera, but I actually think it looks really nice next to the more neutral yellow. So the next thing I want to think about is like, if I'm happy with my color and I'm happy with the way that my stamp is printing, which is like yes and yes, the next thing I want to think about is like, well, how do I want to actually orient this pattern, right? Right now I've got 1, 2 light yellow, 1, 2 dark yellow, and they're just next to each other. So what I like to do is just, you can kind of stamp off the excess like somewhere on your tablet and sort of clean off your stamp. But I'm going to start to think about like different ways of using these patterns and stamps so that they interlock with each other and are oriented on the page. Because the nice thing about working with a modular stamp is that you can move it any which way. So let's see. Okay, we untape this and hold up the camera. So you can see I'm stamping in groups of 2. And something that I'm doing is I'm actually kind of putting, let me point with the pencil here. I've got like the tip of my lightning kind of like moving into the spaces that sort of set between them. Rather than line the tips up like tip to tip, I'm actually trying to kind of like put them inside each other to make a pattern that's more dense. And it's not perfect, but that's why this is my scratch sheet. And frankly, even if it wasn't my scratch sheet, if I was printing on my actual sheet that wasn't perfect, there's a kind of variation that's happening here that is charming. That's sort of something that's interesting that happens with like the rubber stamping technique. Additionally, notice, I'm not sure if you can see here, that there are like little bits of static around the stamp, kind of like here, almost like the corner of the stamp is stamping, and that happens in the negative space. That's good stuff. That is actually kind of like that really interesting fuzz that happens on a stamped image that just kind of signals to the viewer like this was printed by hand. Okay. So I could continue with this orientation, or I could actually start to experiment with something else. Let me, just for experimentation's sake, let me try something else. But one thing, you know, my paints have been sitting out for a minute, so I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of from like a distance, I've got like my spray bottle set on mist. I'm just gonna actually mist the surface. Just basically moisten it. Like, I don't want to get it wet. Well, I mean, I do want to get it wet. I don't want to get it sopping wet. But that little bit of water can just kind of help extend the drying time. And I can also add just a little bit more. I will say, this process, it's a little bit of like, it's kind of like a Goldilocks situation. You don't want too much and you don't want too little. If you have too much paint on your slab, it'll actually kind of impede the printing process. And if you have too little, it may start to dry out. So there's a little bit of finessing, I find, that it takes just to get used to how much ink you need out. Okay. Yeah. Darker yellow. Okay. It's just a back and forth, back and forth. There's a slight bit of overlap, just because, not because really I intended it, but because I actually didn't allow for enough space. I stamped all the light ones first on here. I did like light, 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 and then I went back and did dark, 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 dark in between. And I thought that I had actually left enough space in between, but I kind of didn't. But that's okay. I've got a little bit of overlap, so I'm going to add a second row of alternating color and see what that does. that. Okay. Here we go. Okay. I actually think that I prefer this one to this one. So let's say that this is one of the ones that I want to like recreate on a larger scale. What I would do is I would take my like non-scratch paper, the paper that I really want to print on, and I think that this is a little bit smaller than the paper that you guys have. This is just what I had in my studio. And I would go ahead and tape it down. On my work surface. And what you can do, sometimes I like to start like sometimes I'll start just like in the upper corner and work my way kind of like, top to bottom, left to right, almost like a printer. I can also, depending on my pattern, I can start in the middle and work my way out. But I want to say something about the edges. Your patterns will look really good if you print right off the edge. Like if my lightning bolts, if I just continue printing them right off the edge so that they just extend off the edge of the page. Like here, notice that they kind of stop right at the edge, and that makes the pattern feel very contained. You want that continuous patterning like on the whole surface of the page. So what I like to do is actually split my scratch sheet underneath one of my edges, and that way I can actually just print right off the edge and I protect my surface underneath. Does that make sense? Kind of like give yourself like a backing so you can actually just kind of continuously print all the way to the edge. But that is really the long and short of it. And the thing is, these patterns here, I'm kind of like approaching this very simply just for demonstration's sake. But I could also take my stamp. I've been printing it straight up and down. I could print, 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 print. I could also flip it totally upside down. Print, 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 print. I could print on a diagonal as opposed to just like left and right. I also could print and utilize the negative space of the page. I'm essentially filling up the page with my stamp and not allowing for any blank space. But I could, have a print and then maybe a hand's worth of space and then another print and then a hand's worth of space and then another print, and actually have a design that was quite sparse. Now I'm doing all of this with just one stamp and two colors. But of course, I could have multiple stamps in one color, multiple stamps in multiple colors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I recommend actually trying different approaches for each pattern, using one stamp, maybe actually trying like having one pattern where you experiment with color but keep the stamp consistent. Or you have one pattern where you have many stamps but keep the color kind of tight. The interesting thing about this process is that I feel like because everything is printed flat and printed in a repeated design, it's very easy to integrate a lot of elements, be that various stamps, various shapes, various orientations, or various colors, or some combination of all of those things. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what's fun about it. So, go ahead and grab my chair. I'm going to switch back to my face for a second. Can you see my face? Hey. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Is that like about what you were expecting? Yeah, Roxana's got the thumbs up sign. Okay. One last thing. Let me talk about like working with different colors on the slab. So I'm going to switch back to my hands. So in that video. Okay, I'm going to move my studio camera up. So I've still got my two slabs here, and they're tacky. So I'm going to go ahead and spritz them a little bit, just so they stay wet. And the thing is, like, after a minute of sitting out, even with the retarder in it, like it starts to get kind of chunky. Like you see when I ran the brush over it, there's like little chunks coming up. And so then it becomes like not the easiest thing to print with. And so at that point, what you can do is you can take your razor scraper and actually just scrape that up. So I'm gonna take my brush and just run it over here and get all the usable paint that I can off of it. I'm not sort of using my brush to pick paint up as opposed to put paint down. And I can just take my razor scraper and it just scrapes right up. Let's see, grab a rag. So if you want to change colors, or if the paint that you put out just becomes like not workable, and you just want to start with a fresh batch, what I love about working on the plastic is that you can really always bring it back to zero just with a razor scraper. I also have a large enough work surface that I can have like multiple colors of ink out. So I can have like 5 different ink slabs, 5 different stamps, etc., and be kind of stamping to my heart's content, you know, and spraying, and then recharging them with my individual cups. I think that is essentially everything that I want to say about that. So I'm going to switch back to my face. Are there any questions? No? Okay. Do you guys feel like you have what you need to get started? Yeah? Okay. I recommend, at least in the beginning, maybe working with no more than 3 colors per pattern, but that could be something that you experiment with later. And in terms of color, I just kind of mixed up 2 yellows just to kind of get going. But I would actually refer back to my grocery store list and, you know, look for that list for combinations of color that were appealing to you, and also looked at how the product designers like used color in these designs, because if they caught your eye, in this product design, they will likely catch your eye in a piece of work too. And that's the type of thing that, as an artist and a visual thinker, that you can kind of lift that color usage from somebody else and apply it to your own work. Okay. Also, I'm going to say, do as I say, not as I do. Like yellow lightning is like a little straightforward. It's just like, well, like if I was going to make an animated movie, I would make lightning yellow, right? But of course, it does not have to be that way. Like I could have had pink lightning or blue lightning. Is anyone? This is like a really old expression, but has anyone ever heard the expression "blue thunder"? Do you know what that means? Carol, are you shaking your head yes? Yeah. Do you know what that means? Yeah, tell the class. What? You're on mute. Oh, you can't unmute? Okay. Blue thunder, as I've always understood it, it's like it's like a way that you describe the cops. Like, oh my gosh, here comes the blue thunder. It's like a word to describe the police. But I just always thought that was like a funny expression, blue thunder. You know. So anyway, I would encourage you to maybe be a little more divergent in your color thinking than I was. But it's not something that you just have to come up with on your own. You can refer back to your grocery store list and look and see what was appealing to you in that setting. I always find it surprising how much detail I'm able to get using this method with my stamps. But keep in mind, like that is directly related to the amount of paint that I put out on my palette. And so if you're finding that you're losing some detail, like maybe like try and thin the paint down or kind of spread it out a little bit thinner on your palette. But like, I do also think that some loss of detail, especially for very tiny cuts, may be just kind of like part of like the cost of doing business. But I also think that like these stamps, you can get that detail if you were to use like a true ink pad, okay? So that's it. I'm gonna let you guys get started and I'm gonna hang out right here in case anybody needs advice, insight, or things like that. And I actually think I'm going to start working on like a lightning pattern because I kind of want to make mine and sort of use it for something that I'm working on at home. So I'm going to be right here printing with you guys, and feel free at any point to unmute, ask questions. I certainly would love to check in with you guys and kind of see how printing is going. Okay.
Ryan, have you tried applying the paint directly onto the stamp with the brush? Does it get?
You know, I haven't, but let me go ahead and do that right now.
I was experimenting with markers.
Oh, really?
And
how'd that work?
Great. I mean, I don't know if it's the final look I want, but I found it easy like last night. Let me see if I can find my thing.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I was just using one color last night, but just now I was alternating, and like on this one I put 3 different colors, but I don't know how that would work using the.
I'm gonna make that bigger. I want to see that. Is this just magic markers?
Yes, my daughter's Crayola markers.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa, those look great.
And so like there I was seeing what 2 different stamps with 2 different colors look like, but then like this stamp was kind of broken into thirds.
Yeah.
So I just used 3 different colors.
I really like that.
I rotated, and I was trying to like not match up the pattern, but match up the color. Like so I rotated it. So orange was here, put orange there. But I think I'll be in a situation there. I don't think that will match up. But anyway, I thought that was neat, and so.
That's very neat. Do you feel like it took you a long time to color in the stamp?
No, I did all of that while I was really paying attention to what you were doing, but I did that too.
That's awesome.
At school on the little cheap styrofoam papers, which you can, and it doesn't work as well on there, but I really like these rubber stamps.
Yeah.
Because the ink wasn't drying out, and I just took the beveled edge, the side of it, and ran it over.
Gotcha.
I didn't know
if I paint the paint directly on, I end up like, yeah, I feel like I might have to like get a little more used to it. But I feel like I get less of an even stamp and I lose detail. But it's almost like, I feel like it's almost like a motion like painting your nails, where it's like you're not pressing down, you're painting across.
Yes.
And
different brushes will probably work better than others too.
For sure. So I don't know if I have the right brushes or if I'm just kind of, because I'm not getting like the best prints with that.
Yeah.
Like this, see those three right there?
Yeah.
I'm losing some detail. But I feel like with a little bit of practice, I could get it.
It could depend on the stamp too. Like yours doesn't have very much surface area, but that one has a lot.
Yeah, mine is like mostly negative space too. So like if I'm gonna paint across it, like I might end up accidentally putting paint in the middle, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So I think that could have an effect on it. But I don't know, I could see that working too. Another thing which I did not do is I could actually, using a brush on my glass, put two swatches of paint next to each other and blend them on the glass, and then kind of get like an ombre effect, and then stick it to that.
Yeah.
And that's something that I normally do in a print shop because that's very easy to do on a roller. But you can also do it with a brush on glass. For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool, Alice. I actually would be curious to see the marker and the paint like on the same pattern, because I do think that the marker ink is going to be like less opaque, like the colors are more luminous because like the white of the page is showing through it. And then the acrylic paint, even if you were to mix those same colors, they would visually read differently on the page. So there might be like kind of like a color weight thing that you could play with.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. I like the markers. And I love, of course, markers are just, everyone's got markers laying around.
It was really easy.
Yeah. Anybody else got anything? Yes, Ayana.
I just wanted to ask Alice, when you put the markers, when you switch colors, did you wipe it and then put the new color on, or did you just go straight into the new color?
Well, last night, am I unmuted? Yeah. Last night I used a light blue marker to test them all just because that was what I had in here. And I just had my daughter bring in her markers. So when I did it today, I guess it looked like that at first. It still had the ink on it from last night, but it was dry. And then I just put solid red on it first today. And then I decided to change colors. But most of it, like this is after I've already pulled it. Well, it still did a pretty faint stamp. But I think most of it comes off. And I was using similar colors. That's why I chose those three, because my stamp already had color on it. I hadn't cleaned it. So I chose the warm colors to go with it. But it was really easy to do. I'll just do it real quick. I just took the side of the, I don't know if I can do this. Took the side of the marker and just colored on it. And because of this design, I didn't have to be really slow and careful where the colors went up next to each other. And it doesn't dry very quickly on here, so I can take my time to add the color. I was a little bit more careful when I was doing it before of making my brush strokes go in the same direction, so it'll be interesting to see if that shows up, which could be interesting. I'll see. It is.
Amazing.
Cool.
So, now I probably would if I was going to change my colors. Let me do it right now. I'll put a green on it. I probably would. Oh yeah. So I just put this mint green on top. But because it still had all those same colors on it.
It's like mixing the colors.
Yeah. But it kind of made it neutral like your yellow
Yeah, yeah.
did. But I think it'll look kind of muddy on here.
But probably only the first few stamp. Yeah, it's like kind of brown.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
can't tell the green at all.
yeah, but probably only the first few stamps that would do. Like if you just took it and stamped it a bunch of times on a piece of scratch, you'd get all the extra stuff. And then if you put green on it, it would print green.
Yeah. Now I think I have color all over the marker, so it's not going to be green. But I really like it. I mean, I don't know if I think I'd really like to see what the paint would do too.
Yeah.
As you're talking about how the color of the paint being opaque would look differently. But this is a fun, easy way. And it was a quick way last night for me to test my print, and I made changes to it.
Yeah.
Afterwards. So again, I didn't clean my marker or my stamp.
Okay.
There is more green on it now.
Yeah. Getting greener.
Mm-hmm. So just a fun little thing. That was a blurry stamp, but that's all right.
That's cool. Yeah,
Well,
I mean, it's like
for sure.
the rubber is like not absorbent, like of the carving rubber. So it's like nothing wants to kind of go in here. I mean, stuff will dry on it if it just sits there forever for sure, but it's not going to be absorbed the same way that like the paint's going to be absorbed in the paper or the marker ink. So that's very cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Neat.
Awesome.
This is totally off way out of there. But do we use the retarder on the paint, the speedball ink too? Can you use it on that, or do you not need to?
Oh, did you end up getting speedball ink?
Just a little bit. Like
So-
I wanted to see the difference and implement some of the paint that I didn't have.
Sure. I don't think that you'll need to because the speedball ink has been manufactured in such a way that the drying time is going to be a little more open.
Okay.
Because unlike the acrylic paint, the speedball ink is like made to be rolled out or spread out and like put on flat sheets. And so it may be unnecessary and it may slow it down like a whole lot, like it won't dry for like days and days. Yeah. Which is, fine. I mean, like I always tell people like when you're done with these, just put them on top of your bookshelf and forget about them, and they'll just dry on they'll eventually dry. But like when I do these with like oil-based printing, the last time I did this, I was actually doing it with oil-based printing ink, which just has a longer drying time in general. And that's what I encourage everyone to do is just kind of like put it on top of the cabinet and then check back on it in 3 days. That way it would, and that usually by that time it was finally dry.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, the oil-based ink is awesome because it stays open and for a really long time. But then you also are dealing with like the fumes that are associated with materials necessary for cleanup. So that's kind of a drag when you're printing in your home.
I've never used oil-based paints at all, so I've always been curious, but I've always been afraid, because I don't know what I'm doing, and I have heard about the fumes, so that's why. But that would be interesting to learn about somehow.
Yeah, they're cool. I mean, I feel like if you learn to paint with them, then it's hard to do anything else. But if you start with other types of paints and then learn them later, it's more easier to. I feel like it's easier to go back and forth between the two if you don't start with them. I don't know. I've gone back and forth. I feel like I change my mind on it every few years. Like I used to teach my freshman painting class in oils, thinking like this is hard. We're just gonna jump right in, get it out of the way. We're gonna be good. But they're also, in general, they're more expensive. So I kind of transitioned to water-based paints because they were cheaper. Then I noticed the quality of the paintings got better. So I don't know. It's like 6 in one, half dozen in the other. I think it just depends on the person. Yeah. I actually do not have any water in the studio, like a cup of water. So I'm gonna, the faucet is outside around the car. So I'm gonna step away just for a minute, but I'll be right back.
Mm. Kenzie, if you can't be kind, go to your room. He can watch something if he wants. All you have to do is.
Hey, Alice, you're still unmuted. I'm just letting you know. So if you start cussing your children, it's going to be on video.
And recorded forever.
Yeah, recorded for posterity.
That was probably a lucky situation.
I wanted to share this real quick too, and this might be common knowledge. It just kind of occurred to me. I was wanting to rotate my stamps in a particular direction, but it's hard to tell that when they're upside down. So I just numbered the edges so that like I can have it, like I'll know which edge I want to do if I want to go in order.
Look at you. Now my brain did not work that way. Thank you.
And you could number each of them if you wanted the rotation to be set. It could be one of those things that nobody notices except for the person who created it. That was kind of fun too, how they all met up, sort of.
Oh, I like it. And that's after you numbered it, so you knew where to put it.
Well, that's kind of why I numbered it. And that one, because I'm like, I'll spend forever. So now I'm curious to see when I repeat this, what's going to happen here when those meet.
Oh gosh.
Always evolving.
That's very cool. I had to label the back of mine like up so it'd know which side was up. Yeah.
So Brian,
Yeah.
something interesting today. I found I just came across an old wood block cut. It looks like a Middle Eastern kind of Indian design, like
Okay.
that they would print on fabric for blankets and stuff. And it has the big, like, just raw wooden handle and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pick it up in Douglasville today, but it's big. It's really big, and she sold it to me for $5. I told her I was an art teacher, but it looks like such a cool artifact to have to show the students, and I'm going to try and print it too, but I'll show it to you tomorrow when I get it. I thought you would think that was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Where did you find it?
On Facebook Marketplace. I wasn't even looking up printmaking stuff. It just came across, and it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
But it just looks really crudely made, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a beautiful design.
Yeah. It probably was used for printing like fabric that was really long.
Right.
And
Like big ones.
I mean, you can imagine like how difficult it would be to hand print something huge with a stamp this size.
Right.
But yeah, like when you scale things up, I mean, you can kind of do more damage. But yes, I've seen that process. I've seen that process in action, and it's really awesome to watch. But yeah, I'd definitely be curious to see it. You'll have it tomorrow?
Yes, I'm going to pick it up this afternoon. I'm excited.
Cool. I actually think I'm going to get a rocking chair for the studio from Facebook Marketplace. I just need a cheap rocking chair, and that seems like the best way to get cheap stuff these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just moved, and I sold a bunch of my stuff through Facebook Marketplace. And then my partner, he sold a bunch of his stuff in anticipation of me moving in. We had to sort of mutually downsize. So we've been doing a lot of that lately.
Brian, are we using this drawing paper that we ordered for the bookmaking also? I can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Yeah. Yes, the drawing paper is also for the bookmaking. And the nice thing about the patterns, and you may have figured this out, is that once they are done, they could potentially be utilized for the bookmaking. So if you're printing your patterns and making the books out of the same paper, then you can actually use like one or the other for the other.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Folks, how's it going? Yeah? Good? How are we doing with like the acrylic paint? Are we doing the acrylic paint or the markers or both?
I'm doing both. I'm using I use like a olive green with the acrylic, and then I'm using my stamps as well. So like, here's the olive green and I stilled it. It's not very opaque. So I probably used too much of the retarder.
Oh, well. One thing is that some pigments are just naturally transparent, unless you add like an opaque color to them, they're just going to be transparent, even right out of the bottle.
Yeah. So I used that one up, and I really I'm just playing around with different combinations and writing down what corners that I'm repeating.
Yeah.
So I can see what that pattern looks like.
I really like that stamp on the lower right with the organic.
This one here?
Yes, yes.
That is the one where the two pineapple cans came together. It looks very like tiki.
Yeah.
Like T-I-K-I,
Yeah, or like mid-century modern.
Ooh, I like that one better. That sounds much more mature.
Yeah. Anybody else? Ooh, Carol, tell us about it. Oh, you can't unmute, can you? There you are. Nope, you're muted again. There you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I did the point, and it's
Oh, cool.
I know it looks very butterfly-ish,
Uh-huh.
painted out that way, but I kind of like the pattern that it made.
Can you hold up your pattern a little bit longer to the camera?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Cool. That is beautiful.
And it's like the corners sort of overlap with one another, which is how you're able to create those V shapes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I also tried it, rotating it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like this part.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice. What is that based off of?
A dragon fruit, the actual fruit,
Mm-hmm.
where the kind of flips over.
Awesome. I like how
I love that they have derived from the grocery store, and you just never would know if you didn't know the process. I love it.
I know, that is one of my favorite aspects of this, is that I mean, because of course, like the takeaway is that anything can become a source, and no matter how banal. Yeah.
Oh.
Dragon fruit. Yeah. Like anything, no matter how everyday and banal, can become manipulated to make something that's just really exceptional and unusual and wonderful.
And when you are showing people and they're like, oh, it's a pattern, cool, or whatever, but then you actually have a conversation to talk to them about the pattern and the whole history behind it, and then the experiences you had while you were doing that, and so it just leads into a whole new conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't need it. You can put it over.
Anybody else? What else we got?
If you ever need it, and I'm not here, I might.
Okay, Gabrielle, you've got your alternating masks and dead flies. Yeah, I'm into those colors that kind of looks like a brown and a pale blue. Is it a brown?
It is like a purpley brown, yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely love them. That's my favorite so far.
Thank you.
Roxana, you had one too? Yeah. Oh, I like that with the spiral. And that's the abstracted fox.
It is.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Oh.
Yeah, I like the shapes that the fox is making, like the negative spaces, actually. I think that that piece is really enriched by those negative spaces.
I really like the angle and what it's letting me do with the design.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I find that the radial designs, the ones that kind of radiate out from a central point, do some really interesting things. And I also think that, it's worth investigating, like, working on a grid and then also working on a radius, like with the same stamps in 2 different patterns, just to sort of see how they change. Very cool.
I like your lunch stamp on top of it too, your blueberry stamp on top.
Yeah, I was just kind of trying them out, but then it grew. That's why they're all taped together.
Uh-huh.
I like that.
Uh-huh.
With the blueberry stamp, I don't know if I should get rid of the edge. I kind of like it.
I like the edge too.
I like the edge, and if you wanted to repeat it, the edge can be really helpful because you know where to place it next to itself. I find that to be kind of like a really helpful accident.
And Roxanne, are you still going for that illustration kind of like storytelling with yours? You're on mute.
Okay, yeah. I'll show you guys the rest. Yeah, it's like
because the blueberries with the border looks really cool for like an illustrative, I can see a book coming together.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, so it's
the
fox, the cricket, the blueberries, a mouse, and some leaves.
Cool. I like the cricket. Do foxes eat crickets?
Yeah, crickets and grasshoppers.
Oh, yuck.
And this is
just dip them in chocolate. It's all good.
Yeah, I have had a chocolate grasshopper. Yeah. I've got mine here that's finished, and I wanted to show you what happens when you print off the edge. So I just made sure to have that like backing sheet. So I've along the top, I've just got like the bottom parts of my lightning, and then like the side, and I just really like the effect that is created by like the all over pattern. So that's why I recommend printing right off of the edge. But I also think it's possible you can print a whole bunch and then kind of trim the edges down after the fact. It produces like a similar effect one way or the other. But I will probably use this when we get into bookmaking. So I wanted to go ahead and finish like a whole one. Anybody else got anything? Isaac, what you got? Oh yeah. I'm gonna pin you and I'm gonna make you bigger. 1 second. Hey, go ahead and hold that up close. Can we see your pattern? Yeah. Oh, cool. What is that based off of?
That's I think La Choy.
Okay, it's from the brand.
Yeah, and it was a endeavor. I had the gouge. I've got a little wider than I wanted. I've got a really cool set of like Japanese gouges somewhere in my house, and of course I have been yet to find it, and that's been kind of frustrating. But I've just been using this guy in the meantime.
Sure.
And I'm not really thrilled about. I think I'm just gonna lose the edges, and I'm gonna try to downsize it so I can get this a little closer. But it seems to work. What I'd like to do is probably just alternate with the dark green and the light green, and then I'm going to try to print right over these, but leave a little outline maybe, because I did these just to try some different positions. There's a purple, and then I tried some different angles
Uh-huh.
with this too. But as far as trying to make something with this, I think if I two-tone it, maybe it'll bring it out a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not sure. Or the overlapping, it might even, I think I'll just experiment with that and see what happens.
Yeah, I like the 2 greens.
Yeah, that was an accident, but it worked out good. I was going for brown, but it's this green, this light green is just not going away. And so that's okay. I like it turned out well.
Yeah, green can be kind of hard to work with. It can be kind of a tricky color, but I think it works well with other versions of itself, I think. Like, that's what I always find.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Awesome.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Jessica, how's the line coming?
All right, hold on.
Yeah.
I have issues.
Yeah, I see you're being rudely interrupted.
Yeah, so I have this, get down. Stop. I have a chair, and it's like it's a Verrier chair, and I don't know how to explain it. I might be able to show it to you, but it rocks, but it's like a seating chair. And it's great for like drawing because you can like morph your body around it, and it's really nice. But he hates it. And so every time I move, like, he's got to be right here to make sure I'm not going to kill myself. And it's just like, it's so frustrating, but he'll eventually get used to it. Anyway, okay. So my lion, it's coming. I think my goal is to finish all of the carving today. And then I'm thinking, so I'll show, it's like coming together a little bit better. I'm starting to get on the forehead and stuff. But my thought is that I'm gonna do some numbering. So I'm gonna cut it. I think I'm gonna print one just to see what it looks like with all of it, and then I'm gonna cut it down into smaller quadrants. And I guess my question before I do that is do you have a recommendation so that because the goal, okay, so let me process through this. So the goal is to be able to have the whole image and then take apart the image to make like a puzzle that kind of like goes around and creates like its own design on top of the lion.
Okay.
So it's almost like the lion's hidden, but if I didn't want to have the lion hidden, then I could create my own design with the other puzzle pieces of the lion itself. Does that make sense?
If you didn't want to have the lion hidden, you could.
Okay, let me try it again. So like if I so let's say I wanted to have just the print of the lion in the background.
Okay.
Then I would cut the lion down.
Okay.
And then move it around to create more like designs within the lion that may not look anything like the lion at all. They might just be like a really cool wavy pattern. So that the lion's kind of hidden behind all of that. Or that's like one idea of a piece. And then the other idea, which I love about printmaking, is just scrap the whole lion. I don't want the lion in the background, and just take the pieces of the block and create a design that's like unique based on just like manipulating the pieces. And so, does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I mean, I guess like it does make sense. Are you explaining what you're going to do? Are you asking if it's going to work?
Okay, that was me verbally processing it. Now my question is,
okay,
how do I cut it down to where the whole design isn't destroyed? Do you know what I mean? So if I how do I cut it? So my first idea was to just paint parts of it and not paint other parts of it. And so I never had to cut it. But then I'm realizing as I'm watching everybody that the smaller the pieces, it's easier to manipulate them. So I'm asking is there a special way to cut it so that the lines are still lined up, so that if I wanted to line them up to where the line's completely seen again?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Hold it up to your camera. Let me take a look at it. Back up a little bit so I can see the whole thing. Okay. So, I mean, the thing is, any way you cut it, it's going to make the image incomplete, right? Because you're going to be cutting it into pieces. So what I would recommend is in order to have your cake and eat it too, you want to cut it in such a way that it could still be put back together easily, even if it was in separate pieces. So I would start just by cutting it in half right down the middle, like right through the lion's eyes, like just straight down the middle. And then you're gonna end up with basically 2 halves. And I would print those halves, like rotate them, print them like in diagonals, like, you know, just because like, depending how you print them or how you repeat each half, you may be able to abstract them or manipulate them, but you could also just quite easily put the 2 halves back together and print them side by side and make a continuous image. Anything other than that, then it becomes like, in order to make a continuous image, you have to start to like line up this piece and this piece and this piece and kind of get them all to work and think about it in reverse. So it's like, I would start with just 2 halves and see how that goes. Maybe you cut those halves into halves. But I would definitely start with 2 halves. But for sure, I would print it a bunch of times just by itself before you cut it.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I love this. I'm so excited.
All right, the thought of you, oh, there you are. The thought of you spending all of that time and making that beautiful printing plate and then cutting it terrifies me. That's so permanent. What if you kept it whole, made a whole bunch of prints like Brian just said, and then before you cut your printing plate, cut your prints and manipulate those and arrange those, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Cut your prints into the segments that you're considering and then rearrange those. Like you could print several different colors of your full lion and then cut those, like if you did 3 different colors or 4 different colors, cut those in the same exact way and then use pieces from each of the colors and put those back together to see how you like it. Because once you cut your beautiful plate, it's not going to go back together.
She's right. It's true. I think that's an excellent suggestion. Yeah, so it's almost like you're collaging the prints to make a pattern as opposed to cutting up the plate.
I see. Okay, thank you. I'm so happy I'm in a class, because this is stuff I missed, is for me to tell something to somebody and then somebody be like, no, don't do that to yourself. It's like my brain just overloads and I don't know what to do. So, and I get stuck. So, okay, that was really wise advice.
I do agree with Alice. I mean, it's hard to think about you cutting this thing that you've spent days and days and days like working on, because it is permanent. You know, you can't put it back once you cut it.
It's also going to be challenging, I think, to cut it smoothly because it's so textured. Like when we cut the stamp originally from the block, wherever I put the block, like it was all smooth, even surface. But now, like with all these different ridges, it's gonna be hard, which that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just so permanent. I would do a bunch of prints first, but I take chances in jumping off of rocks and stuff like that, but it scares me to take a chance on something that's replaceable, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
I think I'm in the same boat. My brain does not simplify naturally.
Okay.
And so like with Jessica, my first batch was like way too big, way too detailed. And I'm not crazy about this material. I really like linoleum. And I was really frustrated with how spongy this was. And
it's
like cutting into a sink sponge. And anyway, so I did a second batch and I'm looking at everyone else's prints and I'm like, okay, mine are still way too complicated. I have to do things over and over before I get to that place where it's like, okay, this is simple and it works. So
right.
I'm loving it. I'm loving the class. It's hard to do condensed for me, but I'm loving it.
Yeah.
That's why I like the idea of the viewfinder, because it forces you to simplify and see lines and shapes rather than a huge, intricate, overwhelming design.
You're right. That's probably what I should have done.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Have any of you guys done any graphic design? A little bit. Gabrielle's saying yeah. So I am. I'm designing right now a risograph print. Has anyone ever heard of these risographs?
No.
Yeah, it's like Gabrielle. Yeah. It's kind of like a color Xerox machine. It's like it like works like a Xerox machine, but it can print in color, and you put the same piece of paper through the machine in layers. So all the ink is colored, and it prints on top of itself, and then the colors overlap and make new colors. But the way that you design it is that you actually make digital files and kind of think through all the color layering. And then I don't have my own, like the risograph is like a machine. Like it's like the size of a Xerox machine, and it's expensive. And what I'm doing is I'm outsourcing that to a print shop that has a risograph. So I have to prepare all the digital files. I basically put in an order, send them my files, and they just print it and then send it back to me. And the way the machine works, there's no way to proof it. Like you just set it up and go. Like there's no checking it. So I have to kind of do it all on Photoshop and Illustrator and things like that, which I'm just kind of more used to doing things by hand. So I've been having to work with vectors, and that's like kind of new territory for me. So I actually drew out everything I wanted to do, and then I scanned it, and then I had to convert my drawings into vectors in Illustrator. And it's this really weird process where it's like the way I draw my hand is not naturally like, here's the line. Like I'll sort of draw like 4 or 5 lines, and somewhere in there is the actual line that I want. And in scanning this thing and converting it into a vector, it's like the computer clarifies my drawing in a way that I don't naturally do that on my own. And then once it is in the computer, then I can scale it and make it bigger, and I can distort it if I want, or I can kind of tweak it in a way that I can't really. And so I've been thinking about this, like using the computer to kind of make something simpler, which I normally think of using a digital media as a way to make things more complex. But in this instance, I've actually been using the computer as a way to simplify things so that I can put it in this other form and then print it in a way that'll be more complex. But it's nuts. I mean, and I've had to kind of go through it a few times to sort of figure out how to make it. It's tricky. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, go ahead. Somebody.
Oh, Ayana, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's a little off topic here.
Okay.
I got one of my blades stuck. Does anybody know how to get it out?
Oh, is that like the tip that's like this part?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. Hold that up to the screen so I can see. Oh man, okay. Yeah. I think you need to. I think you just might need to grip the blade.
Yeah, mine has been getting stuck. You just put it in like your shirt and unscrew it as hard as you can without cutting your hand open. Can you stop? I'm sorry. I'm here with my entire family, so it's been a. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's like I think you just might need to like grab it and then just turn it.
Yeah, I've been doing that, and I mean, I don't know what I did. I cannot get it.
It's in there.
Kind of bang it too. It happened to me last night, and then inside there, that you have the ball and then the little side thing.
Yeah.
That actually came out of mine, and then I thought I broke it before I even got to start carving. But I was able to kind of put it back together. It did eventually, but I just had to keep working.
Okay, you had to like hit it on something?
I think so. That's usually my go-to.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
You gotta sweet talk it.
Yeah.
Start with that, then go to hitting.
Let's see. I feel like somebody had. Jessica, you had a question?
I was just reflecting. I'm just learning a lot about process and in this class and like how it's just okay. I feel like I'm giving myself way more grace. Like I really relate to Shannon or what Shannon was saying about like the details just like overwhelm me sometimes and I get very cerebral about what I'm doing. And then I just get lost in it and I've never even used a finder. Like that was like, whoa.
Yeah.
This square, because when you sent it in the mail, I like told everybody, I was like, I don't understand what we're doing. Like I just can't. I'm trying to picture what this is all about and what this class is. And I was telling people, I was like, now I understand like when I give my students a list of supplies, like how their parents must feel, because like here I didn't know what we were doing. Like I was just so oblivious to it. And it was like a mystery to me, but it's helping. But I like what you said the other day, and it's like really stuck with me about you just can't get away from your nature.
Yeah.
And that's just really helpful to think about because I think I'm just my worst critic, and I don't know if other artists in this room are like this, but I just
100%.
Like, destroy myself. Like I will work on something so much that it's like, I hate it, I'm done, forget it, and then I just destroy it, and it's like, I don't know how you get over that. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think you can't get away from your nature, but I do think you can. We all sort of learn different ways to work with it. And I for sure am my own worst critic too. And there's just things that I try over and over and over again. And I'm like, you are not the kind of person that can do this. Like another person, the way they're wired, they can do this with, and it's actually the natural way that they do things. Like this is not how you naturally do things. You do things like this. And so if you want something like that, you have to manipulate this. I mean, you just kind of figure out little ways to work with yourself. And the Finder is all about focusing on things that are simple, because you can start with something simple and then make it really complex, and sometimes like starting with something really complex and trying to work with that, it's such a complex thing on its own that it becomes difficult to work with,
That's good.
Yeah. But I also feel like the process by which we learn to work with our natures is something that we sort of develop in our studio life over the course of our lives. I mean, it's sort of something that we kind of figure out over the course of our lives, And the nice thing about being an artist now in the 21st century is that there really is not one way to do it. And so we have kind of all these different methods of making art available to us that previously were not kind of available to artists. Like, I think there's been other periods in history where things were much more closed down. But for us now, it's just like, well, if this doesn't work, we can approach it like this. And both of those activities, they feel like art. Whereas previously, I think things we would have been doing in this class, we wouldn't even necessarily have called them art. Because it's just like, well, that's not art. Art is this and only this, So yeah.
Ryan, I like I don't know if it's your approach or kind of acceptable for printmaking in general now, but when I was in college a few years ago and I would do printmaking, it was all about everything having to be so neat. There was no static or fuzz. I like how you talk about that. When you get the negative space showing up, like that would kind of mess up a print. And if you did layers on top, everything had to be lined up perfectly. It's just, and it was a very stressful setting, but I think those things add so much to your design.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, I relate to that a lot. Like, I definitely I had a professor who I feel like she was kind of doing a version of what I'm doing now, which is like she sort of saw the merit in both approaches, because she wanted us all to be able to be really neat and really tidy and kind of tightly register our prints. And we had to make editions of things. We had to do 10 copies. They all had to be identical. That was part of our grade, etc. If there was a single fingerprint in a border, like, we dropped from like an A to a B. I mean, just like right away. Like, you dropped a half grade for every fingerprint, like that kind of thing. So she definitely had that. And when we were done printing, you had to be able to eat off the table. I mean, like we were like expected to be very clean and neat. But then she celebrated approaches that were a little more open, and moved away from that kind of tidiness and restriction. And so I don't know, I was lucky enough to have a teacher that she taught me how to do one, but she was open to the other. And so I am thankful for that. But yes, I'm familiar with that approach to teaching printmaking, and it's intense.
Yeah. And Jessica, I think as far as what you were saying about being your worst critic and having to have everything so detailed and perfect, I used to be like that too, and I kind of still am, but I found that the longer I taught children, especially young children, and then having to kind of serve as a role model or example for them, and then teaching them to embrace their mistakes and not give up, I think that has really changed me and allowed me to learn how to embrace the mistakes that I make and realize that it's not ruined. And like starting was always the scariest part of anything, because you just kind of go into a block, or, oh, mine's not going to be as good as everybody else's. And I think working with young children has helped me. I'm still not over it, but it's helped me a lot.
For sure. Yeah.
Are you elementary school or middle school?
Elementary.
Okay. That's good to know.
Hey, can I pipe in here? I think I remember you saying that if things didn't work out the way we wanted, we could come in with a brush. So I did the double, the triple double, and I'm just painting the background with this yellow.
Oh, yeah.
And tying it in a little bit, not too shocking, but it's a little, I think it looks on the phone, but it's, I think the yellow kind of helps lift it, but I don't know if y'all can even see.
I definitely can, yeah.
But I'm just drifting around them and trying to get it. And I was even thinking about doing this before I printed it. I was saying, I should probably paint a background. And then now this is the long, hard way to do it.
Yeah.
But I'm satisfied with it now. I think it's going to take a minute to get back in the swing of this. I took I took at least 4 different printmaking classes. Not so much because I really don't I think it's very tedious and difficult, and I just like to paint. But I really liked the professor. He was just awesome. And he's an American guy, but he is like very popular or famous in Japan. And he goes annually to like Hawaii, I think, to do this conference. And he's just really a successful printmaker. And he was a printmaker for years before he became a professor. So he was pretty, like you talking about you had to clean the heck out of the table and all the tools and everything, and it had to be really pristine. And I think I made B's in like every class of his, but I just kept going for it. And I'm trying to remember, is intaglio a type of printmaking? I took an intaglio course with him, which I really liked, and I cannot remember all the different styles of printmaking that we did, but I'm one of those guys that has to just I can go in and memorize anything momentarily.
Yeah.
knock it out, and then I cannot remember. It's really frustrating because I get, I'm the middle school teacher. Whoever was asking, that's me. I'm the crazy guy who signed up for that job.
Yeah.
But it's hard sometimes to admit to the kids, like, I promise I know what I'm talking about, but give me 5 minutes because I got to Google this. I cannot remember the name of it. I remember the process and application, but man, the names just kill me.
Was your print professor, was it John Amos?
It was, yes.
Yeah, I know.
Y'all know John. He's so wonderful guy. Is he still teaching? Or I know he had cancer and throat cancer.
Yeah. That's so funny. He is still teaching. He had his cancer treated. He's cancer free.
Awesome.
He came to an exhibition at the museum at Piedmont.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He came there, it was a few years ago, and he walked in. I actually used to be an adjunct at UNG. And so John,
get out. Okay, wow.
Yeah, way back when. And John was my boss. He was the department chair then. I don't know if he still is.
Lucky you.
Yeah, he was a great boss. But anyway, so we know each other. I mean, we have a bunch of friends in common, and he came to this thing at Piedmont, and he walked in, and he had a tumor. If he was looking right at you, you could see
right
it.
Here.
Yeah. Did you see it?
Oh yeah. I mean,
it was.
I hate to admit how many cigarette breaks I snuck with him. It's kind of like, duh. Is a huge sign. Stop smoking. And I used to wonder. I never brought it up or said anything, but it was like the elephant in the room. And then I saw on Facebook just this gigantic scar, and he was going through all that. But I gave him an A+ is what I wrote on the Facebook comment. You get an A+ for recovery, buddy.
Totally. Yeah. That's so interesting that the elephant in the room thing, because I noticed it, and my knee-jerk reaction was like, don't say anything about this. I'm sure he's self-conscious. And he didn't say anything about it himself, and then eventually I was like, I gotta ask, because I somebody in my life had actually just had something like that, and they'd waited too long to have it looked at, and it had turned into a cancer that was terminal. So I said, John, I don't mean to embarrass you, but I gotta ask, like, what's going on with this? And he kind of downplayed it, and I was just like, I'm not trying to scare you, but like, you might want to get looked at. And I think he had a few people like that in his life, including his wife, who was just like, go to the doctor,
It's time, yeah.
But he ultimately did, and they caught it in time. But he wrote all those people like thank yous, like thank you emails, just like, thank you for like caring enough to ask about this. And it's a big deal,
It is. And he was, it's so ironic because he and I used to talk about, cooking with iron as opposed to Teflon and aluminum free, sulfate free, this, that, and the other thing, and all these other precautionary measures. But I remember him telling me that those cigarettes was the one thing he felt that for a minute he had control over something.
Yeah.
And they're like crazy to kick. It's a hard thing to do, but I'm so glad he made it through. That guy just on so many levels. If any of y'all ever get a chance, John Amos, JOHNAMOS, but some of his art is just really awesome.
Yeah.
And he's a guy, and he plays in a band called a pretty fantastic piano accordion player, and just a cool cat.
Yeah, he's a very cool guy. Yeah. I'm glad you got to work with him. He's a wonderful person to know.
That's why I kept taking the printmaking. I couldn't get enough of what he's just so knowledgeable. This guy, he's just the kind of guy you want to be. Like, I just really looked up to him. I really wish I could. His just demeanor too. He's just never quick to react. He's very cool and calm and solid. and very confident, and but very open at the same time. I mean,
Yeah.
He's very, I don't know, Eastern philosophy. You know?
Yeah.
Not so. He's not a Western style, which is kind of more of my. I'm highly reactive, and you know, just anxious and nervous and all that. But he is very calming and very calm to be around, and that was easy for me to learn from him. You know.
Sure. Yeah.
So can you tell me which one you like? This is the one that was black earlier that you liked.
Yeah.
And then this is the arrow one. I kind of like the arrow.
I mean, I like both.
I love what is it red or is it brown? It looks red on mine.
It's like, it's an ink. I mean, I went and got several of these to practice with.
Gotcha.
So
I really love that design. I know that I just love it. I don't know why. I mean, it's beautiful, but.
And I have it in black a different way, so it doesn't have those like little circle areas because it's different.
Gotcha. I actually think I maybe like the orientation of the pattern in black more.
Yeah.
Although I like those little faces that it creates in the red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would encourage you, if you're finding like yourself kind of torn between the two, what you could do is like think about your large pattern in quadrants and maybe orient the stamp. Maybe like you don't do the whole thing just one way, right? Like use the same stamp, but you orient it differently, and maybe like a third of the pattern is one way, a third of the pattern is another, and then the last third is the other way. So you actually kind of have a larger pattern within that.
Yes.
I think that could be a way to kind of have your cake and eat it too, which is I'm all about. But like with a larger surface area, with like a larger page, you know, you'll probably be able to do more things.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a lot going on here, so I'm just gonna keep going and see what turns out.
It gets out of hand real quickly, you know. It's like all of a sudden it's just like, oh my gosh, got a lot going on in here. What I think we should shoot for is 3 full sheet patterns. So like 3 of these, where you kind of print like a full sheet, and it feels kind of like resolved, or like you want 3 where it's not like you're trying to figure something out while you're doing it. It's almost like maybe you figure something out on a scratch sheet and you kind of commit, and then you actually execute it like on a full page. We want that times 3. And I will encourage, it's not required, but I will encourage you with your 3 to shift color. Shift color from one to the next, like color combinations, or color variations. I've been doing like this is, I would consider this to be a color variation because it's basically 2 kinds of yellow. But like a color combination would be like 2 distinct colors from the color wheel working together. Like Gabrielle had the blue and the brown for the mask and the fly. Like that's like I think that's a nice color combination. Which actually, yeah, there we go. I'd be curious to see that color combination with another set of stamps, or with another orientation. So essentially what we want is 3 full patterns that explore shifting orientation, shifting color, but that they're all distinct from one another. Now, I mentioned earlier, you may end up cutting into a pattern to sort of use a portion of that for your book. That's fine. Just give yourself the opportunity to make 3 full patterns. But if you're also like, oh my God, I love this, I got to get into this, I can't get enough, feel free to make more than 3. Or make more than 3 and then kind of select the 3 that you feel are the most visually successful or interesting to you. Who's like, I'm into this. Like, this is my jam. I'm totally into this. Lori's into it. Alice is into it. Gabrielle's into it. Ayana's into it. Isaac's into it. Roxanne's into it. Roxanne, I just see like the kind of thumb emerge out of the darkness. Like I love that. Yeah, this is a really interesting way to make an image, you know. And it's there's no foreground, there's no background. There's hierarchy, you know. I think some things kind of come forward more than others, but it's, you know, like no one area is kind of more dominant than any other one area. And it's just not what we're used to thinking about, but that doesn't mean it isn't interesting. And it doesn't mean it can't tell a story or be a narrative, as in the case of the fox eat. Like, what does the fox eat? And I really like that about it. It's just a way to sort of think about making an image or using imagery that we're unused to. And I just love how many things it can hold, you know, like you can put these dissimilar elements next to one another and they work just through, I mean, we know, because we're all familiar with the principles of design, like one of the ways that you get something to visually work is to repeat it, you know, and like that is at its core what a pattern is. Let's see. What I would like to do, I think tomorrow, let me check my little layout here. Hold, please. Yeah. Okay, tomorrow what I would like to do is to start talking about book forms and book formats. I will have some examples to show you, some slides, and I'll go through, I'll share my screen and go through and talk about those, and then I'll put them up on the course canvas so you can access them. And then I will also demo how to make an accordion book. And I have some kind of best practices for thinking, like, you know, how do you think about like making a book? Like, you know, you can kind of make a book and then just like, you know, go to page 1 and start drawing and printing in it. Or you could sort of like, there's some exercises you can use to start to think about like essentially how to work in this form. Like, how do you kind of plan for a book? One thing, did I have you guys get a bone folder? Was that on your list? Yeah, that will be a very helpful thing to have. I think I might have to dig mine out. I've got mine's in here somewhere. But you'll want your bone folder for tomorrow. You'll want some of your drawing paper. And what I think we're gonna do is probably make a practice accordion book, so just like a blank. And then you'll also make a second one that will not be blank. It will be filled with imagery, drawings, paintings of your choice. And you can also utilize the collages or the other things that we've made in this class. They can be repurposed for going inside the book. But I think in order to really kind of get the book, you got to make a blank one first. Then you can, like, once you kind of understand how it works and what's possible, then you can kind of get more experimental with the second one. So we will make the blank one tomorrow, and I'll go over how to think about making the actual one. And we'll start that process on Wednesday. And just as a reminder, this Thursday is going to be another like full work day. Just like, when was our last work day? Was it Thursday? It was Wednesday of last week? It was Wednesday. Yeah, I set that up. So this Thursday, we won't hop on Zoom, or rather, I think what I'd like to do is actually meet with each of you individually. No, actually, how did I set that up? Now I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, on Wednesday, what I will do is actually meet with you guys individually to talk about your books. And then Thursday, if we want to have individual meetings about progress, we can. But Thursday will be like a true work day when you're working on your own. So, are there any questions about stamps, patterns, or anything like that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How much paper does it take to make like the blank book? Because I have 2 blank pieces left. I've really been blowing through it over here, but.
Sure. Good question. It is ultimately up to you. And when you say you have 2 blank pieces of paper, you mean like the 18 by 24 paper?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is ultimately up to you, like how big or small the books are. The first thing we're going to do is cut or tear our paper into even strips. And so let's say your strips are like 6 inches tall. That means you can get 3 of them out of 1 piece of paper. And then you can attach those strips to make an accordion. So like 1 piece of paper might become 1 book. Okay. Or if you want like a whole bunch of strips, you might tear like 2 pieces of paper into 6-inch strips and attach all of them. So therefore 2 pieces of paper become 1 book. So
okay. So I'll just save those last 2.
Yeah.
Because I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 prints.
I think if you have 2 pieces of paper, I think you'll be in good shape.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? Ayana, what you got?
So I just wanted to clarify, or make sure I'm on the same page.
Sure.
So on Wednesday, you said we're gonna meet individually, but about the books. Mm-hmm. When are you gonna reach out to us about the times for that? Like, what works for everybody?
Like when am I going to say to you, Ayana, we're going to meet at 9 a.m.?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I was thinking we could just figure that out tomorrow, Tuesday, or people could just request times. Or another thing we could do is that we could just all we could all come in at. I guess I hadn't really thought about how to do this. Or I could open up a Zoom room and just sort of let people in one at a time, if they want to talk one at a time.
You could also do like I'm sorry.
You could do breakout rooms. You could have breakout rooms. That's probably what she was going to say. I don't know.
Yeah. Is that what you were going to say, Ayana?
No, I was going to say a Google form with like options of, what works.
Oh, like a sign-up sheet?
Yeah, but
like a spreadsheet just uploaded to Canvas that we can just fill out or sent through email.
Yeah. Okay, let me investigate that. That seems like a good way to do that. Yeah, that way you're not just sitting on your computer like waiting, or you kind of know when to come in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good.
And then, so will we do the sign up for Wednesday and Thursday at the same time? Because you said Thursday we have the option of meeting with you.
I think Thursday's going to be optional. Wednesday I'm going to try and meet with everybody, but Thursday will be optional. And so let's do Thursday on just like a as needed basis. I don't think I'm going to do like a true sign up for Thursday. If you need to get with me, we can just kind of work that out through email and just say, hey, can I meet with you at 11:15?
Sure.
Yeah. Does that work for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And then last question.
Yeah.
You said that we're gonna be cutting the paper into like even strips. I was thinking about on maybe one of my prints doing a torn edge. Is that okay, or should I leave it like how it is?
You were thinking about doing a torn edge on one of your books?
Well, on my maybe on the book too, but on one of my prints.
On one of your patterns?
Yeah.
Yeah, like a torn edge around the edge?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. That could totally work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? You guys good? I see like people are negotiating like pets, children, spouses, some combination of all of these, boyfriends. In the case of Gabrielle, her entire family. Yeah, I see someone kind of like making a sign like on the couch, like in the background. Yeah. We had overnight guests come through. Actually, my former coworker from Piedmont was on a road trip to Michigan, and so he stopped with his wife and stayed at our house for a couple nights last week, and we made up a spare bedroom. And his wife, who I know, but not very well, was using the shower in the guest bedroom, and she stopped, and while I was cooking everyone breakfast, and came, kind of poked her head out and said, "I'm so sorry to bother you, but there's terrible, awful things coming out of the drain in the shower." And so, like, while she was standing in the shower, it backed up, and then, like, I think everything that was going down the garbage disposal, like the food disposal, just came out of the shower on her feet. And so I'm about to go back to the house and meet my partner and the plumber, because we're looking into what's going on with this, because this is obviously not going to work. But maybe some of you homeowners have been in these kinds of situations. Yeah.
Not yet, but oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I think I know what the problem is, and I think it's an old house, and it has like metal pipes that over the years, like, are kind of, they've kind of like got a bunch of crud built up on the inside, and I think they need to be swapped out for PVC. And so I think what is going to need to happen is they're going to have to, like, tear out the ceiling and, like, switch the pipes. I think it's about to be. I think our house is about to be a construction zone, basically. Yeah. Which makes me all the more happy that I have my beautiful studio, which is away from the house and can become an oasis. There we go. Anyway, are we good to break for the day or to continue working independently? Yeah? Okay. So again, ultimate deadline for patterns is just that last Friday. Shoot for making 3, but if you want to repurpose 1 or more of them to make your books, it's not like I'm gonna be like, where's your 3 patterns on the last day of class? I just think that the 3 is going to give you a good opportunity to just experiment with orientation, color, and some combination thereof. Okay? Have fun. Lori, I'm very curious to see your big Indian pattern that you got on Facebook Marketplace. You'll have that tomorrow. Yeah, I really want to check in with that. And I will get to work. Well, I will upload this video so that it's available. And I will get to work with a sign-up sheet for our meetings for Wednesday. Okay?
I have one quick thing.
Yeah.
Was it Carol who had the print that was butterfly-ish?
That was Carol.
Because when Isaac mentioned adding color to his, when Carol showed us hers, I thought it would be beautiful to go back in, like where it had the intricate designs, and to go back in and add color with something like colored pencil or paint of a different kind or something. So I just thought that would be really pretty.
Yeah, definitely. And a watercolor, I'm not sure if this is what Isaac was using, but a watercolor, you could paint a watercolor right on top of the pattern, and it will appear to be sitting under it because the watercolor should reject the acrylic, but it will go into the paper.
I did the fluid with the retarder, but I ran to the sink and got a little bit of water, and then
it made it more
diluted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really does set up. And I'll be honest with you, there was a couple spots where the yellow sat on top of the green, but then I just wiped it off, and it stayed behind, and then it revealed the green back strong. So it worked out.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Anybody else? Yeah.
I have a totally unrelated question. Jessica, can you hear me? You work at Tapestry, and you said you went over to the grocery store. Are you close to Shallowford? Like, what area do you live in? I don't know how we can take this offline and figure out if we're very close.
I think we are. Where do you
Sprouts. That's what it was. It's the Sprouts. Is it the one like by Dick's over at North Lake? Yeah, you live near me.
Oh my gosh, did you see me there?
No, but I just remember when you said Tapestry and you said Sprouts, I was like, I know what area she's in.
Oh my God, we have to connect.
Yeah.
Right.
So right on the other side of North Lake, like the Oak Grove, that's where I live.
Oh my gosh, you're like 10 minutes from me.
Yeah, we have to figure out how we can get together.
I would love that. I would love that. Do that.
All right, I'll keep working.
Okay.
How are you, by the way, how are other classes going? Like, how's Jackie's class going?
Well, I was excited to get so much studio work done, but Jackie and Dr. Betts in my social class decided to pile on the work because we weren't in studio. I mean, I'm loving all my classes. Like I told my mom, I thought it was gonna be a nightmare going back to school and having kids. Like I am loving my classes, but I find that I don't process quickly, obviously, and I need time, and they want you to read all these articles and put it all together and write a 4-page paper, and yeah, they're good, but I can't wait to be done.
Okay.
It's good.
Yeah.
Everyone else feels that way. I need time to like, let me mull things over. Let me have some coffee and think about that article for a day. And it doesn't happen. That doesn't happen.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. You're not trying to, you don't just want to just regurge.
I need that. My brain does.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of embracing, I had this great quote that was like, stop trying to change your weaknesses and build up your strengths. And I thought, well, that's good. I need to figure out what I'm really strong at and just recognize that I take time to mull things over. I'm not one of these quick things, but I get good things in the end. I just lose sleep. But I don't know. So I'm going to keep working.
Awesome. Okay, let's check in tomorrow, 8 a.m. We'll start talking books. I'll go over slides. I'll have a sign-up sheet. And I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting in just a minute. I'm going to start processing the video and then post it. And as usual, I will send out an email when we've got the video out. But it seems like everybody, in terms of the technique of printing, everyone's got it down. Like we're working with the paint. We're doing good. Okay. Mm-hmm. If anything comes up between now and then, don't hesitate to reach out on email. I'm going to go meet the plumber, but I also am going to be on my computer grading for my other class the rest of the day. So I'll be available by email if need be. Okay. Folks, happy Monday. I will see you tomorrow. Happy printing, and take care.